Desire exists when there is play, when there is humor, when there is curiosity. And so that has to be present in the ether of the group.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Today's guest is a grad of Create Your Program. If you want this to be the year you finally launch your course or make a pivot to coaching, do what my guest did. Get my support in a step-by-step process to create and launch your program. Head over to rebeltherapist.me/create. Are you thinking, I don't know what my topic is going to be, or I have no idea where to start with my program? Yeah, you're going to be in good company with that. You do have a program in you, and Create Your Program is designed to help you find it and create it. As this is going live, you can still get into the cohort that's about to start right now. You're going to be launching your course by a few months from now. If you missed that deadline, just get on the notification list for next time. So go to rebeltherapist.me/create. And now I want to get into today's conversation. Dr. Jenn Kennedy is a clinical sexologist and licensed marriage and family therapist based in Santa Barbara. Dr. Jenn supports clients in the areas of relationships, sex, addiction, and LGBTQ. In 2023, Dr. Jenn launched the Pleasure Project, which is dedicated to helping us all have a better sex life. Through this venture, Dr. Jenn hosts a podcast called Pleasure Project, Sex and Relationships, and she offers small group intensives for women and couples. She's coming out with an asynchronous course in 2025. Dr. Jenn has been quoted in Redbook, Reader's Digest, Forbes, Health, Daily Om, Shondaland, Parade, Allure, Yahoo Life, and others. She's often tapped to discuss intimacy and sexuality for therapists and physicians. And she's a grad of Create Your Program. You're about to hear why she created a program called the Pleasure Circle to help women who want sex more. Welcome, Dr. Jenn. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Okay, so I want to find out, who do you work with in your program? Who's the typical person who signs up?
Yeah, it tends to be women between, cis women between 40 and 63, I'm going to say.
Okay, cool. And what are they struggling with?
Typically, they're not feeling a lot of desire for sex.
Okay.
Yeah, they're feeling kind of either some trepidation or just not a lot of interest in sex.
Okay.
And that's been going on for some time.
And they want to feel more desire.
They want it.
Okay, they want it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
What made you create this program for them?
As a sex therapist, you start to see, as any kind of therapist, really, you start to see the same problem present over and over again. People come in and they sit down and they say, this is what's happening. And, it's like, okay, I've addressed this so many times. And so it's like, well, there's a lot of people that have the same problem and the same pain point, as you would call it. And I think I have a mass audience that needs some addressing. And so I'm going to address this group of people that needs some help. And so, yeah, that's what started to happen, is just that I feel like there's a predictable problem that keeps happening. And so that's what my program tried to address.
Okay. And you were addressing it over and over and over again in your sessions and seeing, all right, these are the same things I find myself helping people with. These are the same things I find myself saying or teaching over and over again too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then how about for you? What made you want to create a program in your own life?
Well, also, I found that I couldn't really take on more clients.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one person and my schedule was full all the time, and I couldn't really scale anymore. My schedule is so full, and it's not humanly possible to see more clients. And I was sort of maxed out on how much I could raise my fee. So it seemed like the only way to grow, I mean, I already had associates and that type of thing. That model was maxed out too. I mean, it wasn't, but I didn't want to just keep growing that way. So it seemed the only way then was to go to many. And so if I grew a program where I could bring more people in, then that was a way for me to reach, instead of just one-to-one, go one-to-many.
Okay, so that one, I want to come back to this little thing you said about the having associates wasn't the part of your business model that you wanted to grow. And I used to run a group practice, and I also did not end up wanting to grow that part of my business model. What were some of the reasons for you that you didn't want to just keep maxing out that business model?
Well, I'm still doing it, but I didn't want to continue just growing that more and more and more because it requires office space. There's just overhead. It requires, those are humans that need supervision. They have lives, they have problems. It's liability to those cases. It's a constant feeding them new cases. There's just a lot of variables there. The market comes and goes. There's just lots of things that I enjoy some of it, but I don't want that to be my only steady diet,
Absolutely. It's a big responsibility to employ other people also. And like you said, to hold all of their clinical work too. It's a big responsibility. And it's also, for me, I noticed that having a group practice did not feel like a really nimble business model in the way that running a program feels nimble, meaning like I can make a change. I can see something that I want to change in the program or something I want to try in the program.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to say a word. I can just change it. It's done. I
Yeah.
can share it. I can get excited about it and share it in my marketing, but I don't.
Yeah, you can just pop on the website, you can
Yeah.
change it, you can change price, you can change marketing strategy. That's true. Nimble is a good way to put it. I've got one assistant that works with me, and we brainstorm, we change it, we, tweak it on, the social media, the website, all of that. So it is quite nimble. Mm-hmm. It's responsive marketing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so getting back to how the program has been for you, it's been through some iterations.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like now?
So it's still 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That was how it started, and that's how it's continued. That feels like a good pacing for me. It's 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That also feels it's been between 75 and 90 minutes. I find that even when I have a smaller group, 90 minutes is still just what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of where the content tends to fall.
And is that with like 90 minutes because then there's room for both the content and digestion of the content?
Yeah, robust discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I find that's just, sometimes there's people who really want to unpack it and talk. And yeah, it just feels like that's naturally kind of where it is. And
Nice.
so even when I've said, because I thought, well, if there's fewer people, maybe I should have it be a bit shorter. But then it always leaks past the 75-minute spot. And then I end up, and I like to, if I say it's going to be 75, I like to keep boundaries. And so I'm just going to make it 90 and really honor that time. And so I've just kept it at 90, and that seems to work best. And then I just watch the clock and keep it there and allow the time for the group discussion. And that works best.
That's great. So 6 weeks, 90-minute sessions. And what is the range of how many people are in the group?
Usually it ends up being 6 to 8.
Nice. Okay. And is there homework or anything between sessions?
The homework tends to be a podcast. So I give them, I always end with sort of a takeaway of what are you willing to kind of do in between, but it's not like hard and fast homework. And then also I give them a podcast, and the podcast is one of mine. So it's, it kind of reinforces, and I do that a lot with clients too, is I'll give them a takeaway of a podcast that's reinforcing, and then they can choose to listen to it or not. They don't have to, but if they're hungry for a little bit more, then they can do that. But, most of these people are pretty busy, and so they don't necessarily want a lot of extra stuff to do, but if they want to, they can. Well, and podcasts are so nice because they can just listen to it in the background as they're doing other stuff. And it feels kind of like, I don't know, I see it as like a handshake or like a baton where they can just sort of like, it's like I'm handing it off and they can take it if they want to, and they can also just not, it just feels easy enough. So I have some high achievers and they like to have something that they feel like, gets them through and and they'll listen to it twice. They're very eager. So
Yeah.
the other people are like, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, that's cool,
Yeah.
because it's sex. It's sex, it's desire isn't something that you can go aggressively at, it's actually, it'll get more shy and shut down if you go at it that way. So we got to be careful, we can't shame it or it won't work.
How would you describe what your approach is like in the program, like what you're teaching people about desire?
Well, I would say, you have to kind of live it, and desire exists when there is play, when there is humor, when there is curiosity. And so that has to be present in the ether of the group. In the discussion, in the way we share, in the way I talk about the material. So when I'm typically opening up the group, I have everybody do a check-in, and so there's a prompt. And then there's also, after everybody does that, I do about a 15 or 20 minute kind of mini lecture kind of discussion. And the tone is definitely light because I'm trying to get them to come in with some softness, right? I don't want them feeling like, this is important information and you need to because that's not the right tone to strike. They need to feel like, hey, this is okay. And it's because this is tender information. And if these women feel like they're not doing it right, or they're already coming in with a little bit of defensiveness usually and some like trepidation. And so I'm trying to kind of lower that fear and have it feel fun. And week 1 is usually pretty loaded, but then it starts to lessen as they realize everybody's in the same boat. And so if we can get there, then we're doing well. And usually by like week 2 and 3, there's a lot of humor, which is great. That's a good sign, when they're sharing contacts and they're laughing and they're cross talking and all that kind of thing. That's good. That's what we want, because that's the vibe that's going to help them actually start to say the hard things, because with sexuality, man, that's the hardest part, is like really opening up and saying those things. I've never had an orgasm, or, I don't know how to even be sexy, or am I too old to be sexy, or all the things that women of this age in particular feel.
In your experience working with people one-on-one and in this group, is it different? Is it easier or harder, or just different, helping them get to that place of feeling like it's okay to talk about this stuff?
I think this age group is very different than working, say, with women in their 20s or 30s. Very different. Like, they're just in a whole different space. They've oftentimes not prioritized their pleasure systematically. They've sort of ignored. They've had a mind-body separation. Most of these women are straight, so they've been in a system that, they've just been regularly sort of allowing penetrative sex when they didn't want it. And so they've not had a lot of pleasure in that configuration. Sometimes they've just kind of done it as maintenance sex. And so there's a little bit of resentment in there. There's sort of some avoidance, so reintroducing the idea that they can have pleasure is like, wait, what? And they're approaching perimenopause, or they're in it, or they're menopausal. And so their lubrication is down. So having some of those conversations practically and letting them kind of reapproach this with a whole new idea of hormones and lubrication and all the erogenous zones outside of what they've understood. It's like, wait, what? So it's pretty eye-opening, and it's really helpful to have it be women, because they're quite affirming with one another.
And is it helpful, do you think, that it's a group?
Yeah, absolutely. The group element is actually critical because, first of all, in therapy, I can't say these things in the same way. I it wouldn't be appropriate for me to give my lived experience in the same way that the coaching model specifically can, and the participants can say to one another. I am a little more forthcoming in this model than I ever would be in the therapy space. It just wouldn't be appropriate. But also I can give information in this space, and then the women give, again, like I said, the crosstalk, and sort of as they're checking in and they're talking about their own experiences, and I can see all the aha moments that happen. And that's why it's so powerful, because they're learning from one another, and they're hearing themselves, and, their check-ins like impact one another. So yeah, I think they learn exponentially faster because of the group.
Amazing. In creating the program, did you hit any emotional barriers? Did you hit any moments where you felt afraid or stuck in any kind of way? Was there anything that you had to move through to create the program and put it out there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were barriers of like, is this too obvious? And then barriers like, is this too graphic? Is this too promiscuous?
Mhm.
There's so many taboos. And by the way, so often when I post stuff, it gets flagged, which is so freaking frustrating. Everything sex related is taboo, which is so
Mhm.
frustrating. Gosh, it's like, come on. We're still in this stupid age where, women's sexuality has bars around it, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
So again, that reinforces it. And so it's this, and there's a lot of shame around sex for women.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so hard to build this program in the first place. But I do see the transformation happen over and over again. So it's been a little bit of a challenge to fill the group, because women want this information, and yet they get so afraid of stepping into a group for exactly that reason.
Ah.
So it's been this catch situation. Once they go through it on the other side, when they're in week 3, 4, and 5, they don't want it to be over. And at the end, they're all like, I want to get everybody's number and be friends. And I'm like, yes, this is why we do it,
Yeah.
But, there's hesitation in joining, because they're like, what if I know people
Mm.
and I don't know anybody, so I don't know who they are? So it's both, right? It's like,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, I'm in a small town, and initially it was a lot of people in the same town. And so they were afraid that they were going to know other people. Now it's broadened. And so it's a lot of people that are just all over the place. So that anonymity is actually helpful.
Mhm.
But they're like, what if the other women's problems are different from mine?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. People want to be different, and they want to be the same.
That makes sense. And anytime you're putting a program out there that's on a somewhat stigmatized or super vulnerable topic, I think it's vulnerable for the person creating the program. Like you went through this thing of, wow, is this too much? Is this too graphic? And then the people going into the program are dealing with that same thing.
And each time the group culture is different. I do 1 week on anatomy. And so we're actually looking at vulvas, and
Mhm.
I post pictures of vulvas, and I purposely post pictures of, all different looking vulvas. And you never see that. You always see these pretty pink vulvas. And I want to show hairy vulvas, and I want to show, all the different, different size, different color, different shape, different, everything. And I can see there's some shock. And that's okay. But like, come on, because I guarantee that they don't all look like the ones you see, in Playboy.
Mhm.
And that's important, because most of the people that are in the group don't look like the ones in Playboy either. And I want to normalize that, right? So that you feel more comfortable. We're also looking at toys 1 week. But I always do feedback, right? I do feedback midway, like in the 3rd week, I do feedback. And at the end, I do feedback. And I get important stuff in that, because I want to make sure. And some of it's around that, like, thank you for showing that, because I wanted to see myself in this. And there was silence during the week I was showing toys, but also, oh my gosh, I get feedback that I ordered some of those things. And I was so thrilled to have permission. I've never done that before. You know what I mean? Like, so just because, and I've seen this when I was teaching, like back in the day too, just because there's silence doesn't mean minds aren't going and people aren't thrilled. They're just they just don't know what to say, or they certainly aren't going to say it in front of everybody. So, it's a process.
Yeah. We'll get right back to this episode. I just wanted to pause for a moment to tell you about my offer for therapists and healers who want to expand beyond private practice and launch their own programs. You get to be in a group of driven and open-hearted folks like yourself, and you'll be launching your own pilot program. This all happens in my 10-week container, Create Your Program. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Okay, let's get back into the episode. How did you figure out that you wanted to do feedback partway through?
Well, because I didn't want to get to the end and feel like I didn't address stuff that was happening and then it's too late.
Yes.
So I thought, well, gosh, I can't ask out of the gates what they want, but at least midway through, I have some. I think I learned that actually when I was teaching grad school, because at least midway, they made us do that. And that gave me some opportunity to course correct.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I got that from. But halfway through, that at least gives me 3 more weeks to, that's actually where somebody told me too, we'd love to do breakout rooms, more breakout rooms. So for the shy people that aren't going to say it in front of everybody, I started doing breakout rooms, and I'd break them into 2s so that they would have chances sometimes to answer prompts in, with just one other person. And they love that. So it gives them a chance to do some more talking, and the shy people get more airtime.
There's a tendency, I think, I've had this before, of being afraid to get feedback, because what if the feedback's negative? And kind of feeling like, I remember when I was starting my program, I would feel anxious when I was opening up a feedback form.
Yeah.
I find that now that I get feedback all throughout the program, and I'm also just like older, I'm like, just give me what you got. Tell me, I'm okay.
Yeah. It's instructional.
It's just different now. But I really think getting feedback more of the time, it lets you course correct and make the program better and better over time. So if there's anyone listening who's like, I wouldn't want to get the feedback, you really do. It's going to be helpful. It's going to be, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be supportive if someone has a suggestion. And honestly, if somebody's pissed off or not happy with the program, you're probably already sensing that, and it's going to be better to know. So I'm just sending that as like a love letter to my former self, or to anyone who's listening to that now.
Oh, another example is somebody said, I would love more case examples.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to do that. I was able to bring that in and say, okay, so or they said, if you could give more examples from your own life. And I was like, okay, I could do that a little bit, So if they're minor tweaks, or if you could bring in some examples, great. And that wasn't a big ask, So if people are willing to give you a little bit of feedback, yeah, great. And that'll make them happy and feel like they got some more value from you. Okay, I could do that.
And how much do you feel comfortable sharing about your own life, your own identities in the group?
I do actually share pretty openly, much more openly than I would ever share as a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, because I actually have had some clients in my groups.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a totally different environment. Yeah, I feel pretty open doing it.
You said that most of the people in the group are straight, and you're not straight.
I'm not straight. Yeah.
Does that ever feel like, and neither am I, by the way, if anybody doesn't know me, but do you feel like that's a barrier? Do you feel like it's helpful? Like where does that fall for you?
It's so interesting. I don't put it front and center,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one of those things that I almost feel like a responsibility when it's important. I say it, because I also feel like visibility matters.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's relevant, I feel like it is important to name.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I feel like specifically in my group, I'm talking about women's bodies. I'm talking about women's pleasure. And so sometimes that is relevant to the conversation. When we're talking about oral sex, or we're talking about, lived experience. I've had that lived experience, so I guess
Mm-hmm.
that might come up. Yeah, I don't know. I did try to start a queer women's group, and I couldn't get enough women to sign up for it. I've had some queer women in my group.
Mm-hmm.
I did sort of pull in some specific content for them. That was great. I was really happy that was possible. And, I think all the women were just happy to have it. So we just, we did some kind of unique content for them, which was cool.
I mean, I always think, I know this could be overgeneralizing, but I always feel like queer people probably make a lot of the best sex educators because there's a lot less like default to what queer sex even means. So, yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's a wider view sometimes because it's
Mm-hmm.
like the default always gets sort of narrowed. And it's like, I don't know, like I was on a podcast the other day and somebody said something about this presumption that women together would be better lovers because and I was like, no, no, no. I said humans are good lovers. I said, no,
Yeah.
I said that's not a fair assumption. I said it's about how attuned you are. I said you
Lovely.
can't assume because he's like, it just makes sense, women together. And I was like, no, it doesn't. I said people together make sense and people who are in their bodies make sense. You know what I mean? I
Mm,
said men together make a whole lot of sense too. Come
yeah.
on, don't do that. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to buy into that. Just come on, but
Yeah.
you have to allow for all the configurations. And so I think, we just have to be responsible and open to every configuration.
Beautiful. So, how do people find you? How have the people who are in your groups, how have they found you?
Yeah. So, well, Pleasure Project is the site dedicated to this work. I also have a podcast, which is called the same name, Pleasure Project. And that is running regularly. But I'm on Instagram under Dr. Jenn Kennedy. And we're starting to do more advertising. I'm dabbling in lots of things. Know if any of that advertising really works.
Mm-hmm. So, like paid advertising.
Yeah, paid
Mm-hmm.
advertising. Yeah. I'm starting to guest on a lot of podcasts, which is cool. But I'm also having lots of people come on my podcast to talk about sex and relationships because that's the focus of mine. I've had urologists, I've had anal specialists, I've had gynecologists, I've had just everything you can imagine that has to do with sex and relationships is our focus. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's cool. It's like really broadening that whole category.
And when people sign up, where do they say they found you?
Many of the people call in for therapy
Okay.
and they are clients of somebody in the practice or they see me on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's actually been part of it. Or they hear the podcast. That's actually been part of it too, I think.
That does make me okay, so now I'm just geeking out with you a little bit. That
Yeah.
does make me think about like Instagram ads because okay, so a lot of people will ask me when they're just first starting their program, should I pay for Facebook or Instagram ads? I say, absolutely not. No, not until you're at the stage that you're actually at, where you know that someone who finds you on Instagram follows your content, that some of those people end up signing up for your program. That's when you know, okay, if I amplify that, that might actually, it's not a straight line, but it might actually lead to more participants.
I'm not paying much for Instagram ads. They just follow me on Instagram.
Okay.
I tell you what I've been doing recently was something that this last year I had a publicist, did a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
quotes and that kind of thing. Again, I don't know that it led to much. What I started doing though is thinking about companies that are aligned with my population. Went into their followers, started following people that follow them, and then they have started following me back. So I'm building my following,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that I can kind of build up my Instagram, and then from there maybe start doing more ads.
Yeah. I mean, I think, then I learned this from Claire Pelletreau, who that's what she does is Facebook, Instagram
Mhm.
ads is this thing of like, if it's working organically on Instagram, meaning you're not paying for it, then amplifying it might actually work. And looking at like when someone does follow you, what is it that they kind of need to know about you, about the program, that kind of thing that helps them make that decision.
Well, also I do a weekly newsletter,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that weekly newsletter alternates between 1 week is an article and the other week is a new podcast drops.
Mm-hmm.
And then also weekly, I do an Ask Dr. Jenn. And that is that's for Instagram. And it's just a 90-second quick thing. And that, that's just kind of usually something that is just a snapshot of something something sex related, sex or couples related.
Very cool. So you're doing a lot.
Yeah. And all of those are on YouTube. YouTube is crazy, by the way. I was never on YouTube. This year I put all of that because I had all that video content.
Yeah.
So I just put it all up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube is like a lot of men, which is so strange because my audience is really women. But I have as many followers on my podcast as I do on YouTube. So I don't know. I think men just like watching a bunch of videos about sex, even though it's really geared towards women. So I don't really understand what's happening. I kind of don't mind I don't pay attention to the YouTube, but a lot of it gets watched. So I'm not really sure where that's going, but
interesting.
I figure it exists. So I just will repost it there.
So how do you so you've got a lot of marketing activities. You've got your newsletter, you've got guesting on podcasts, creating your podcast, creating your newsletter, doing the Ask Dr. Jen's. And then there's some stuff like behind the scenes, like moving things over to YouTube. So that's a lot. How do you manage that? Do you batch it, like do a whole bunch of things at once? Do you do a bit every week? Like how do you fit it into your life?
Well, so that's my intention for this year is to start batching. I have a part-time assistant that is helping with that. And I'm thinking I'm going to start kind of squeezing that into like having a day where I'm just doing that content. I've been sort of doing it a little bit more and more in batches where I'll just bring like 3 outfit changes and do it. I'm like, I have one good hair day and I'll just do it all together, to make it easier. But like we just did like a little brainstorm the other day and I came up with like 12 new ideas. And I'm like, okay, I want to pick a few of them and just do some recording, when I feel inspired.
And do you do the recording by yourself or does your assistant help you with it?
I do it all by myself. Yeah. And so also when I'm recording, I alternate between a recording of just me and then recording with guests.
Okay.
So the guests, obviously I have to read their book or, do some research and prepare for those. And so that takes some more time and scheduling out in advance. So that requires more production effort. And then I record those and then she takes it from there. So she's sending all the stuff in advance. And then once it's done, she takes it in Riverside, does all the production stuff, does the show notes, converts it, adds the intro, all that stuff, and does the cover art and makes it all ready.
Nice. My spouse does that for me these days.
Oh, so nice.
Right?
It's just, oh my gosh, it takes a village.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, so what would make you want to batch more? What do you think you would like about that better?
Well, because the stop-start thing, because right now I'm also still in practice, right? I still have, okay, so prior to 2024, I was seeing about 23 clients a week. Now I'm down to about 14 or 15. So that's the change. Going forward, I think that's still good for me, maybe about 12 to 14. I think I'll keep going forward. But I think I'd like to squeeze those into maybe a 3 or 4 day work week and then have one day just be probably dedicated to like admin creative, so I'm writing and recording. And really my goal for 2025 is to do a lot more speaking because that's the other thing is I'm doing a lot more public speaking and that's where I wanted to go. So I've been doing, speaking to chapters and doing like grand rounds. I put my hat in the ring for a bunch of big conferences. So I'm waiting to hear back and see if those happen. I'd like to be doing TEDx conferences, those kinds of things. That's what I'm hoping to do. And podcasts and that kind of thing.
Excellent. And what are the reasons why you want to do more public speaking?
I just think it's really fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just feels right.
So like it's fun and getting the word out about this message. Yeah.
Also too, the other thing, is that I recorded all these videos for my course.
Yeah.
I've got like, I don't know, 50 videos that are all incrementally like the little snippets of my course. And I've handed them off to this instructional designer in England. And he and his wife, it's this couple that I selected from Kajabi experts. And they're building my course as a evergreen, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it, but like a
Yeah.
recorded course, they're building it, and that will hopefully be coming out in the spring. So at a fraction of the cost, people can watch it offline and do it, asynchronous.
Okay. And are you going to have both options then?
Yeah.
Like the group and the asynchronous? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'm hoping it doesn't cannibalize on the live version, but I think there'll always be people that want to do it live and that people that want to do it asynchronous. And so it'll be less expensive and people can do it anytime they want. It's interesting because years and years ago, I wrote a book, totally a different topic. It was on the business of architecture, and it was a hard copy book. And then when I eventually put out the PDF, people internationally could buy it. But when that came out, the physical book stopped selling. And I was like, oh, dang, So I don't know, a little bit of hesitation on that, but I'm aware that also that it just kind of makes sense. And I'm hoping that will make it more accessible for some people. So we'll see. There's also people that really want a retreat model, but that's like the bougie high-end expensive one. And I have been looking at that. I actually went on a retreat last year to kind of see what that would be like.
Yeah.
But it's just so cost intensive, and I'm a little afraid because you have to put all the money up front.
Yeah.
I have this place I really want to go, but you literally have to commit to like 21 rooms in advance, a year and a half out. And if you don't fill it, you have to eat it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not doing that. But that's thinking big. That's dreaming big. So we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Anything that I didn't ask that you want to say about just the whole experience of creating your program, selling your program?
One thing. Okay. So what I will say is that my least favorite part is making sales calls. So right now I've got this giant grid of anyone who I've ever spoken to who has expressed interest. And I have tracked everybody. I've got them in colors and I've got notes, and I am just so diligent about really keeping track of them. And it's a feat, and I hate it. I hate that part. But I make myself do it, and I psych myself up, and I call them, and I just have a little conversation with myself. I am not bothering them. I am calling them back because they have expressed interest and I have something that is valuable, Yeah. And but I have to acknowledge that is hard for me to do because I don't want to have to do that. But I'm aware that that's just part of the deal. And I was hoping it would just get easy and they would just call me and they would just book and it would just go. And it just doesn't work like that sometimes.
Do you have a few minutes right now?
Yeah.
Do you want to work with that just a tiny bit?
Sure.
So you're calling people. So you're like actually calling them like with a telephone. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're calling people.
I'm old. I still call people.
You're calling people who have expressed interest at some point or another in the group or in working with you, something about it. And what is it? There's a part of you that believes that you're bothering them. There's another part of you that feels like this is just what I need to do. And then I'm wondering, is there any part of you that likes making these calls?
No.
Okay. So there's the part that that feels like you're bothering them. And then there's the part that feels like, how would you put it? Like this is just part of it. This is worth it. Like, what does that other part say?
This is just a necessary part of the deal. I have to, I need to reach out and give them information and close the loop or not make them aware, because they're on my mailing list. I'm sending them information. I can see they've opened up, the newest information when I've sent it. Like they're aware it's happening, I think. But for whatever reason, I don't know what the barriers are sometimes.
Okay. So how often is there a return on this time and energy investment? Do sometimes people sign up through these calls? Okay.
Yeah.
So it works. I'm finding myself really leaning into this part of you don't know what the barriers are. You don't know, it's almost always a woman. Okay, like I don't know. So I'm like speaking as you, like I don't know what this woman might be struggling with, what this woman might be afraid of, what might be kind of holding this woman back from making a decision about this. What do you, that part of you that says this is just a necessary part of it, is there any pressure there on like what's supposed to happen with the call from any part of you?
Yes. I feel like there's a part of me that's not sure about price. Like, does this come
Mm.
to cost? Or is it, I don't know what her particular pain point is.
Mhm.
And is it a game of like me asking the right question? Because sometimes it feels like, do I pitch it a certain way? Or um, do I need to give her enough confidence in me or the group parameters or safety? It's not about scheduling because I'm not moving the
Yeah.
group around, that type of thing. That's not really a possibility anymore. But yeah, usually it's about those other elements, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm sensing that maybe there's a way you could show up for those calls for yourself that might feel a little bit different, that might feel a little bit less pressure, that might feel like no attachment to the outcome. Even though we know overall these calls work to bring the right people into the group, I'm wondering if there's even a way to hold them a little bit lighter in terms of, I'm just calling in case this is helpful. I'm making myself, like I'm doing this service of making myself available, just going this extra mile in case this woman has a question that she kind of can't answer by reading the emails or by listening to the podcast. Like there's some kind of voice to voice that I'm
Yeah.
offering. Because it's okay that like the price is perfect. So it's okay if it's not the right price for her. So I'm getting that like all she needs is your presence on that call. Like you're just available, you care, you're like her confidence in you will happen just by you talking to her, but there's no way that you could like give her confidence in you beyond what you're already doing.
Hmm.
I don't know. How is that landing? And we can
Mm.
absolutely cut this part out of the recording, by the way.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know. Like the other day, a woman asked me, like she said, I've never had an orgasm,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, okay, and she's like, can you work with that? Is that something that's going to be? And I said, absolutely. Like you are not the only one. That is absolutely something we work with in the group. That is something that we talk about in week 3. Like that is part of this
Yeah.
curriculum, so, but I didn't want to go on too much about it, but yes, it was like, can you help me? And it also felt like sometimes what people say when they call in for an appointment,
Mm-hmm.
and then she still said, well, I'm going to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's like, okay. So I felt like, was there something else I was supposed to say?
Right.
you know? And same thing. Another woman said, well, I'm going to look at my budget and just think about it and I'll think about how I feel after the holidays.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like, was I supposed to discount it more? Like, I just was like,
Okay.
and so I've got 3 sort of like floaters, they're just like, ugh. And I thought, shit, is there something else I was supposed to say?
See, and I don't think so. I learned sales calls at a certain point where there would have been another thing that we're supposed to say. There would have been another kind of way we were supposed to take the conversation.
Almost like I was supposed to start pulling away from them or like, I almost feel like I was too generous in it or something. Like I was supposed to start making them feel like I was taking it away or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah, I think we've been taught and we've been on these calls ourselves where there's actually something manipulative that happens.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm hearing like you're giving them space, you're making it very consent based. You're really leaving them in choice. And I think that's right. And so I wonder if like the part of you that thinks you're supposed to do something more, if you hear out that part, not to tell it like shut up, but like hear out that part that I agree with the way you're doing it now in terms of like even if there's like a few people that might have signed up for the course if you like pushed it further or like used some of those other
Mhm.
tactics that I don't my sense is like it wouldn't help your program in the long run. Like, and some of these people where you left them in choice and like you emphasized consent more, if and when they ever do sign up, it's going to be like in their full sovereignty instead of feeling like, oh, I would
For
have
sure.
been, I got the picture that I was going to be a loser if I didn't sign up for this course right now.
Right.
And like,
Right.
you don't want people doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's something there. It happens for me too. If there's something in my business that I find myself kind of like, "Ugh, I don't like this part," there's usually something there around like my values or what I'm expecting of myself that I can shift a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only part that just ugh, I hated,
Mhm,
I hate doing it.
mhm.
Um, some of them always come easy and that feels joyous and it's like, great. You see the value, you want it, you just they're so excited, they feel grateful.
Mhm.
And then there's some that I'm like, what,
Yeah,
what? Dang it. Okay. I've got 5 right now and I'm like, but I've got these 3 that are sort of floating and I'm like, come on, just close the loop.
yeah.
But that's just the nature of it.
Yes. Yeah, and maybe you feeling like that's really okay too, that they're floating. That's the right place for them to
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean you're bothering them.
Yeah.
They need to float. All right. Yeah. So, thank you for playing with me with that
Yeah.
a little bit. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jen.
Yeah. Thank you.
To learn more about Dr. Jen, go to pleasureproject.us or on Instagram, Dr. Jenn Kennedy. I want to thank Ames Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please do a couple of things. Share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely the most important way we reach more people. And if you haven't already, please hit follow and give us 5 stars. That is so helpful to this podcast. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.